Well, welcome back to the power of humility. And we take a moment to become still. Let your breathing slow and set aside the noise of the day. Today, we're going to reflect on one of the purest and most practical expressions of humility, and that is listening. Not merely hearing words, but waiting for your turn to speak. Not preparing a clever response, but truly listening. See, listening with patience, listening with curiosity, and listening with an open heart. And in a world where everyone longs to be heard, deep listening is one of the greatest gifts that we can offer. And it's at its core, listening is an act of humility. The Bible speaks often of the wisdom of listening. In James, it says everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. This simple verse contains profound spiritual discipline. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to react. These words invite us to loosen our grip on our thoughts long enough to receive the thoughts of another. If I'm honest, there are many times when I have listened only partially. My body was present, but my mind was elsewhere. See, preparing an answer, comparing their story to my own, forming judgments and waiting for a pause so I could speak. Perhaps you know this experience. Someone is talking, but inwardly you are already composing your response. You may even interrupt with good intentions, offering advice, sharing your own experience, and trying to help. Yet sometimes what people need most is not our solutions. They need our presence. They need to know that our thoughts matter, their thoughts matter, that their feelings matter, and their story matters. Humility makes room for that. Most people carry unseen burdens and worries and disappointments and questions and grief, hopes that they have not voiced. So when we truly listen, we create a sacred space. And for a few moments, another person's inner world becomes more important than the need to contribute. Now that is humility. Listening says, I am here, I am paying attention. I do not need to dominate this moment. I'm willing to make room for your experience. This kind of listening builds trust more effectively than advice, because before people need answers, they need understanding. Jesus, as a model of listening, and throughout the gospel, Jesus Christ, central figure of Christianity, listens deeply. He asked questions, he noticed what others overlooked, and he gave full attention to those who were often ignored. People like blind beggars, children, tax collectors, the grieving, the outcast. One of his most compassionate questions was simply, what do you want me to do for you? See, Jesus did not assume, he invited the other person to speak. And that is a powerful example of humble listening. So why is listening so difficult? Well, listening sounds simple, but it's demanding. It asks us to set aside our need to be right, our urge to fix, our assumptions, our impatience, and our self-focus. So listening requires emotional generosity, and it means resisting the temptation to turn every conversation into a reflection of ourselves. And this can be uncomfortable, especially when silence feels awkward, especially when another person's perspective challenges our assumptions. But humility enables us to stay present. Listening does not mean agreement. Listening is not surrender, and it does not mean abandoning your convictions. It just means understanding before evaluating. It means saying, help me see what it feels like for you. Help me understand what matters most. See, humility in listening is rooted in curiosity rather than certainty. As the book of Proverbs teaches, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. See, wisdom begins by hearing fully. Sometimes the most healing words are no words at all. The quiet presence, a thoughtful pause, and a gentle nod, a compassionate silence. The Apostle Paul wrote, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn." To mourn with someone requires presence. To rejoice with someone requires attention. Both require humility. So think about the people that you have made you feel really understood. What did they do? They didn't rush. They did not interrupt. They did not make your story about themselves. They listened. And because they listened, you felt seen, valued, and safe. That is the quiet power of humility. Deepening the practice, as you listen, consider asking, what was that like for you? What matters most here? And what do you need right now? And how can I support you? See, these questions communicate respect. They shift attention away from your own perspective and towards the heart of another. So take a moment to reflect. When do I interrupt? What assumptions do I make about others? And how often do I listen to understand rather than to respond? Who in my life may need more of my attention? And what relationships would deepen if I became a more patient listener? And finally, what would happen if I treated each conversation as sacred? Sit with these questions. Let them reveal that growth is possible. Today, have one conversation where you intentionally speak less. Listen without rehearsing your response, and when the other person finishes, reflect back what you heard. You might say, "It sounds like this was really important to you. What I'm hearing is this. That must have been difficult. Tell me more." Notice how the conversation changes when you make space for another person. Listening is a form of service. It costs us time, attention, patience, and ego. But what it offers in return is extraordinary. Trust, connection, understanding, and healing. People may forget your advice. They may forget your stories. They may forget your careful chosen words. But they rarely forget how deeply you listened. Because to be truly heard is to feel deeply loved. Lord, teach us to listen. Quiet our need to speak and calm our impulse to interrupt. And free us from the desire to prove ourselves. Help us to hear with compassion, to listen with patience, to make room for the experiences of others. And may our presence communicate your love. And may our humility become a place where others feel seen and understood. Amen. See, humility creates a silence in which others feel seen. As you move through your day, may you listen more deeply, may you speak more thoughtfully, and may those around you experience the grace of being fully heard. So, thank you for joining me on the podcast 3 of The Power of Humility.